Alright, so once we have derived the weak form, the next task is to discretize the domain and represent the field variable, in this case the displacement, as a linear combination of the piecewise polynomials. Okay. So, here I have discretized the domain, the form line denotes the actual domain and the dashed line denotes the discretized domain. So, as you can see, here we have discretized the domain with quadrilateral elements. One can do the same using triangular elements as well. So, in this mesh there are total 14 elements. Okay. So, if I write the number of elements, there are 14 elements, alright, and total number of nodes, you can say the number of nodes is equal to 21, alright. So, the numbers are as follows: the red numbers are denoting the nodes and the blue numbers denote the element number. So, now we have obtained the mesh and we have decided that we will use the quadrilateral element with degree p equal to 1. So, in that case we have 4 shape functions, alright, that are non-zero in each of the elements. So, n1, n2, n3, n4. So, these are all 1, 2, 3, 4 are local numbers, alright. So, in a given element we have 4 shape functions and each of the shape function is 1 at each node, at a corresponding node, and is all other shape functions are 0 at that node. Alright. So, we know the definitions of these shape functions for quadrilateral element with degree p equal to 1. Now, we have to express the displacement u, okay, in terms of the these shape functions. So, first what we have done, that this integral which was on the entire area, okay, on the entire domain, that we have written as the same integral over a particular element AE, okay, and then we have summed it up over all the elements. Okay. So, then this becomes same as the earlier case, and we have done it for the other 2 elements as well. So, all the terms are evaluated at a particular element, okay, E, and then the contribution of all the elements are summed up, okay, to get what this equation represents. Now, this term, this second integral, this is over the Neumann boundary. Okay. So, in that case, if any of the edges of that element E is coinciding with the Neumann boundary, then only we have to take care of this, otherwise we do not have to take care. So, that is how this has to be done, but otherwise the other 2 integrals are over the area of that element E. Alright. Now, let us see how to represent this displacement in a given element as a linear combination of the shape functions. Now, for this current problem, the u bar has 2 components, one is ux, another one is uy, the displacement along x and y direction. So, to explain this, say let us take element 9, okay, and here the element 9 has been shown separately in the second figure below. These red numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, these are the local node numbers for element 9. The corresponding global node number I can write as 5, 6, 9 and 10, as can be seen in the mesh. Okay. The node numbers, global node numbers for element 9 are 5, 6, 9 and 10. So, this is the node 10. So, now in this element, at every point the displacement has two components. So, is the case for nodes also. So, at each node we have represented this displacement with alpha x1e, that is in the x direction, and the displacement of node 1 in the y direction as alpha y1e. So, node 2, the x displacement is alpha x2e and y displacement is alpha y2e. So, x and y represents the component of the displacement and the number denotes the displacement at that node. So, similarly we have shown the displacement components in node 9 and 10 as well. Alright. So, these numbers associated with alpha, these are corresponding to the local numbers. So, that is why there is alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha x1, alpha x2, alpha y1, alpha y2 and so on. So, now in order to express ux in this element, okay, element 9, okay, the superscript 9. So, we can write this as alpha x1 in element 9 into n1 plus alpha x2 in element 9 into n2 plus alpha x3 in element 9 into n3 plus alpha x4 in element 9 into n4. Okay. So, how is it correct, or how can I verify? We can say, if I check say node 1, if I look at node 1, at node 1 n1 is 1 and all the other shape functions n2, n3, n4 are 0. So, it means ux becomes alpha x1, okay, that is what we started from. So, similarly we can check for other alpha x also. Similarly, uy in element 9 we can represent as alpha y1 n1 plus in element 9, okay, alpha y2 in element 9 into n2 plus alpha y3 in element 9 into n3 plus alpha y4 in element 9 into n4. Alright. So, that is how we will represent ux and uy using the same set of shape functions, that is n1, n2, n3 and n4, okay, that corresponds to the element E or element 9. Alright. Now, one can use a different set of shape functions, say linear shape function, bilinear shape function for ux and quadrilateral shape function for, or maybe biquadratic shape function for uy. Alright. But those are special cases, and in general elastic problems we do not do that, we use the same set of shape functions to represent ux and uy. But there are problems where these are required. So, if I stick to this approach, okay, where the same set of shape functions are representing the ux and uy, so this expression can be rewritten in this form. Alright. So, ux in element E is equal to n1 times alpha x1, n2 times alpha x2, n3 times alpha x3, n4 times alpha x4. Alright, because of these intermediate terms as 0. Okay. So, the first expression is satisfied. Okay. Similarly, uy is also represented as n1 e times alpha 1 y1, n2 e times alpha y2, n3 e times alpha y3 and n4 into alpha y4. Fine. So, this vector, as we know, this is the displacement vector u bar. This 2 by 8 matrix will define as the shape function matrix, okay, which basically contains these shape functions. Alright. And this vector will denote as alpha ue, because alpha, these are the coefficients or nodal displacements, you can say these are the nodal displacements of element E okay, representing u, alright, and which is of size 8 by 1, fine. So, u has been u bar or the displacement field has been represented as the any times alpha vector, alright. Now, before going to the next step, let me just explain regarding the numbering of the degrees of freedom also. We have seen how the local node numbers are written and how the corresponding global node numbers are written. Now, let us look at the numbering of the degrees of freedom. So, if I start with node 1, so I will express the degrees of freedom or nodal degrees of freedom in this case as alpha 1 and alpha 2. It means alpha 1 represents the x displacement at node 1, alpha 2 represents the y displacement at node 1. Similarly, at node 2 I will say the x displacement is alpha 3 and y displacement is alpha 4. Similarly, at node 3 the nodal displacements will be alpha 5 and alpha 6 and so on. So, if I take arbitrarily say node 20, so in node 20 the nodal displacements will be alpha 39 and alpha 40, alright. Then 12 also let us say, then in that case it will be 23 and 24. So, what this number represents? This number represents the same alphas, alright, but numbered globally, and by default we are actually inherently I am assuming that the first alpha represents the x displacement and second alpha represents the y displacement corresponding to that node, alright. So, for this element 9, if I represent the global alphas, so alpha x1 is basically alpha, it will be 9, alright, and alpha y1 will be alpha 10 globally. Similarly, alpha x2, because the nodal global node number is 6, so x2 will be 11 and y2 will be 12. Similarly, for node 3 this is same as, because this is node number global node number 9, so this will be 18 and this will be alpha 17, and finally this will be x y component is alpha 20 and this is same as alpha 19, alright. So, this local degrees of freedom, okay, which are expressed as x1, y1, x2, y2, they have a global counterpart, okay, global counterpart. In this case the global counterpart is starting from alpha 9, then alpha 10, then alpha 11, then alpha 12, okay, then I have alpha 17, alpha 18, alpha 19 and alpha 20. So, this is the global counterpart for this alpha u, alright. So, this local to global relation we have to take into account later, alright. So, now once we have seen how to represent u with these f functions, now let us calculate the symmetric gradient of u, that is what we need to use it in the first integral, okay, symmetric gradient of u. Now, just note that these alphas are constant and the shape functions are the depending on the x and y. So, now let us calculate the symmetric gradient of u here. So, that the symmetric gradient of operator, the symmetric gradient operator has been shown here, and u bar is basically ux e and uy e. So, we are doing everything in a given element e. Now, u has been replaced with the shape function matrix n times alpha u, alright. Now, if I carry out this operation, the first row times this column, so that gives n1 comma x, the first row times second column gives 0. So, similarly, the first row times this gives us n2x, alright. Then the second term becomes 0, then this becomes n3 comma x. So, these are the derivatives with respect to x. Okay. Similarly, the second row will give the derivative of the second row of the shape function matrix with respect to y, okay, and 0 in between as shown here. Okay. Similarly, you can work out and get the third row in this matrix. Now, this matrix which is of size 3 by 8 is denoted as the matrix BE, alright. Now, in the left hand side we have symmetric gradient of U bar E, and what is this? Symmetric gradient of U bar E is basically the strain because of the strain vector that comprises of epsilon xx, epsilon xy and gamma xy. And so, since B matrix is relating strain with the nodal displacement, so this B matrix is called the strain displacement matrix, alright. So, now we know that symmetric gradient of U is B times alpha U. Then what? Then we have to represent W, that is the weight function. Now, in Galerkin approach we said that we will be using the same set of shape functions to represent W that we have used to represent U. So, similarly, we will follow the same shape function matrix N that we have used to represent U. We are using it here, only that the coefficients, the nodal corresponding nodal coefficients, we are representing as alpha W instead of alpha U, alright. So, this is different, alpha W is different from alpha U, and in fact alpha W is arbitrary because W has to be arbitrary except that it has to vanish on the Dirichlet boundary, everywhere else it is arbitrary. So, that arbitrariness is carried forward by the alpha W, alright. So, now once I know the representation of the weight function W, which is a vector, in this case we have two components Wx and Wy. Now, the next thing is we have to calculate the symmetric gradient of W. So, we can follow the same process that we did, okay, for calculating the symmetric gradient of U, and at the end we will end up with the same matrix BE into alpha W, okay. So, only the alpha U part in symmetric gradient of U will be replaced with alpha W. So, now we know the expression for symmetric gradient of U, W and then symmetric gradient of W. So, now we will be inserting these expressions in the weak form and we will try to see what it yields. So, before that, so if I take the transpose of this, say a symmetric gradient of W E bar, okay. So, if I take the transpose of this, what we can write? We can write this as alpha W corresponding to E transpose B E transpose, alright. And this W also, if I take transpose, because W is a column vector, so if I take the transpose of this, alright. So, what we get? We get alpha W transpose N transpose, alright. So, with this set of expressions in mind, now let us go and insert it in the weak form. So, this is the weak form that we wrote for the discretized domain, okay. Now, we are going to replace the symmetric gradient of W transpose symmetric gradient of U, okay. Then we will replace W transpose here and here, alright. So, now symmetric gradient W transpose yields alpha W transpose B transpose. Now, alpha W is a constant, so we have taken it outside the integral. So, we got this B transpose D, and this B came from the symmetric gradient of U, okay. So, this B times alpha U, that is what is symmetric gradient of U, alright. Now, since alpha U is constant, we have taken it outside the integral. So, we will be evaluating only this in a given element, alright. Similarly, W has been replaced with N times alpha w. So, we again got an alpha w transpose here and we got n transpose b, and in the third expression also we got alpha transpose n transpose when we replaced w e transpose. Alright. So, in all the terms we have alpha w transpose common, but we cannot take it outside the summation sign because alpha w e depends on a particular element. Alright. So, what we will be doing next is we will be using the relation between the local number and the global number. In this case it is not the node number, it is the DOF. Okay. So, we are writing the local alphas, okay, with respect to the global alpha, okay, using this matrix. Okay. So, this correspondence I have already shown for a particular element. Okay. So, for any element E that we have to calculate this matrix, and if you try to visualize, this matrix will come up with only ones and zeros. Okay. Most of them will be 0, only certain elements will be 1, because in a given element certain alpha will be same as the global alpha. Okay. So, it will contain only ones and zeros. Now, if we use the same numbering scheme for w as well, then we can write the local alpha w with the global alpha w, alright, using the same matrix CE. Alright. Here end of represents the total number of degrees of freedom. So, for this current problem we have 21 nodes and in each node we have 2 degrees of freedom. So, in that case the total number of degrees of freedom for the current mesh is 42. Alright. So, the C matrix will be of size 8 by 42. Now, once we replace this alpha u's and alpha w in this expression, okay, here alpha w here, alpha w here and alpha w here, and alpha u here in terms of the global alphas. So, what we are getting? First of all, since this alpha u is basically the arrangement of the global number, so this is independent of an element E. So, now we can take this outside the summation sign. So, we have taken out alpha w. Okay. So, alpha w E transpose is equal to alpha w transpose C E transpose. So, alpha w has been taken outside the summation. Okay. So, we got C E transpose, this part remains as it is. Okay. Then alpha u is replaced with C E transpose, sorry, C E into alpha u. Alright. Similarly, in these two expressions also alpha w has been replaced and we got C transpose these two terms. Alright. So, here we have taken alpha w common, okay, from all the terms, because each of the term is involved with alpha w. Now, let us look at this equation. What this equation says? This equation says that this alpha w is a vector, okay, which is in this case the alpha w size is 42 by 1. Okay. If I, and this part which is inside this square bracket, okay, the whole part that inside this square bracket, this is also a column vector if you closely look at it. So, the dot product of these two vector alpha w and this vector inside the square bracket, the dot product of them is always 0, okay, even if alpha w is arbitrary. So, two vectors, the dot product of them is always 0 even if one vector is arbitrary. So, it means the other vector is always 0. So, that means that this part, this whole part inside the square bracket is equal to 0. Alright. Now, once we get that, so we can write this part, okay, is equal to this part, because this part is equal to 0. So, the whole part is equal to 0. So, the first part is equal to the second part. Alright. Now, before doing that, what we have done here is we have represented this integral over a given element as Ke. Okay. So, B transpose dB integral over that particular element E we are representing as Ke, alright, or say superscript. So, we are using a superscript E, and this two parts or terms we are integrating, we are defining as Fe, alright. So, what we are getting finally, because the term in the square bracket is equal to 0, we are saying the first term in the square bracket is equal to the second term in the square bracket, and then B transpose dB integral over AE we are terming as Ke, and N transpose B and N transpose T integral over the element and the boundary respectively we are terming as F. So, then we are getting C transpose KEC, okay, summation over all the elements times U alpha is equal to C transpose Fe summation over all the elements, alright. This is basically the same expression, okay, only the term involved in the square bracket, alright, just replacing this term as Ke and this term as Fe, alright. So, now if I look at this operation, this is basically what it is doing, it is calculating, once we calculate the contribution of a given element, the C transpose Kc is basically assigning this contribution in the global system of equations. So, this is basically doing assembly, okay, this is doing the assembly. So, that is why this C, which is basically the relation between the local number and the global number, is has to be taken care, alright. Similarly, this part also is doing the assembly for the force vector. So, finally, what we are getting? We are getting this C transpose Kec, once we sum it up, once we take care of all the element contribution, so that we are writing as Kg. So, that is Kg, and the right hand side we are denoting as Fg. So, we are getting the global stiffness matrix Kg and the global force vector Fg, alright, and as usual this alpha u are the unknown. So, once we get the system of equations, that is Kg alpha equal to Fg, then what we will do? We will enforce the Dirichlet boundary condition, alright, because that is what has not been enforced or ensured in U, alright. So, that has to be enforced, okay, and then we will solve the system of equations and try to see the results. So, before illustrating that part, let me explain this expression in another way, okay. This is just to relate whatever we discussed in the steady state heat conduction problem, alright. We said that if I assume the weight function W as one of the basis function phi I, then we get the ith equation of the global system of equations, right. So, when we replace W as phi I, we got the ith equation. Now, can I get the same thing from here? That is the question, because I used another argument saying that alpha W is an arbitrary vector, and if an arbitrary vector taking a dot product with another vector gives always 0. So, it means the second vector is equal to 0. So, that argument we have used here. Now, let us see the first argument, the first way of explanation, is it valid in this case? That is, if I replace W as phi I, can I get the ith equation? So, in this alpha I vector, this is a column vector, alright. If in this is an arbitrary vector, so if I can choose anything, okay. So, now if I choose the ith entry of this column vector as 1, alright, and all other entries in the column vector as 0, then if I take the dot product with the second vector in the square bracket, then obviously I will get only one term, which is the ith equation, isn't it? So, it means that if I replace the ith entry of the alpha W as 1 and all other entries of alpha W as 0, then I will get the ith equation. So, it means that the earlier way of explanation or earlier way of explaining the thing is still valid in this case. That is, we are replacing W as one of the shape functions and we are getting the corresponding equation in the system of equations. Alright. Now, the whole process of calculating the element stiffness matrix and the element force vector, alright. So, here it is the element force vector. So, the calculation of the element stiffness matrix and the element force vector, and then assembling the same thing and getting the solution after enforcing the Dirichlet boundary, we will be demonstrating through an example. Alright. So, let us discuss about this problem in hand. So, ABCD is basically a trapezium, okay, which is having unit thickness, say in the z direction, and is subjected to the traction force T along the edge BC and is completely constrained along AB. Alright. It means any point on AB, the displacement of any point on AB, okay, both the ux and uy is equal to 0. So, any point on the edge AB cannot move, okay, they cannot have any displacement. So, they are perfectly constrained. So, this is the Dirichlet boundary that we already talked about, and this BC is basically the Neumann boundary where the traction is specified. Other two boundaries CD and AD are also a sort of Neumann boundary, but they have homogeneous Neumann boundary, alright, no traction specified. Now, the sides, the length of this domain is given as, you can say, this is 1 meter, 2 meter and half meter, alright. So, our idea is to get first the displacement under this load and the constraint, and then get the strain and displacement, get the strain and stress. So, how should we proceed? First of all, we will discretize the domain because we have already seen the weak form, alright. Now, we will be directly using that weak form. So, we have discretized the whole domain as one element in this case for simplicity, alright. So, the whole domain we have taken as one quadrilateral element with degree p equal to 1, alright, and these are the node numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. In this case, since we are taking one element, so there is the local node number, global node numbers are same. These are the coordinates in the xy frame, okay. This you can verify looking at the dimensions provided in the problem. Now, the associated degrees of freedom, we have numbered it alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha 3, alpha 4, alpha 5, alpha 6, and as I said earlier, the first alpha corresponding to a given node denotes the displacement, nodal displacement in the x direction. The second alpha denotes the displacement, the nodal displacement corresponding to that node in the y direction. Similarly, alpha 3, alpha 4, alpha 5, alpha 6 and alpha 7, alpha 8 can be interpreted, alright. So, now here as you can see, we have 8 unknowns, okay, starting from alpha 1 to alpha 8. Now, once we have discretized the domain with one element, the next step is to calculate the element stiffness matrix and the element force vector. Now, in this case we have one element, so the element stiffness matrix and element force vector are same as the global stiffness matrix and the global force vector. So, here I have written the expression for element stiffness matrix and the element force vector that we need to calculate for this particular element. Now, this problem we have assumed the stress strain relation like this because we have assumed this is a plane stress problem, okay, and for which we have already seen the expression for D, and in which the Young's modulus and the Poisson's ratio are to be inserted to get the expression for or get the value of D. Now, if I look at the expression for Ke, I need to have the value of Be, okay, that is the strain displacement matrix, alright, and if I look at the element force vector, I need to know the expression for any. So, I have to define the shape functions in this physical domain any and then get their derivatives to get the expression for B, alright, and then we have to do the integration by hand. So, instead of doing it manually, we will do it through numerical integration, okay, so that it becomes convenient, okay, when we then it becomes convenient to understand the code, because in the code we have to use the numerical integrations. So here this domain has been mapped, or this element has been mapped to a master element, okay, for p equal to 1. So these are the node numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. So it means the node 1 has been mapped to this node, node 2 has been mapped to this node, and similarly node 3 and 4. Alright. So how this mapping is done, this we have already discussed. We said that we will use the linear map. So in that case x is equal to xi ni hat. Alright. What is ni? Ni's are the shape functions in the master element. For degree p equal to 1, we have already constructed the shape functions. So we know the expressions for ni hat, and xi is basically the x coordinate of the nodes of the physical element. Alright. So if I put a value of xi and eta in the expression, we will get the corresponding x coordinate in the physical domain. So here I is repeating, so it means that it implies that I is going from 1 to 4 in this case. So similarly y can be obtained from the expression yi ni hat, alright, summation over I equal to 1 to 4. So now once we have decided this set of mapping rules, for any value of xi and eta at any point in the master element, we will get the corresponding point in the physical element. Alright. So that was the idea. Now we know the expression for the shape functions in the master element, but from there how can we calculate the values of the shape functions in the physical element, that is Ne, alright, and how can we calculate the strain displacement matrix B, alright. Let us discuss that. So here I have shown the master element, okay, with the degree p equal to 1, we have 4 nodes. These are the definitions of these ni hats, okay, this we have already explained. Each of the shape functions are 1 at one node and 0 at all other nodes. So that is how we constructed these 4 set of shape functions in the master element. Then how do we calculate the correspondence between the derivatives in the master element with the derivative of the shape function in the physical element? For that we need the Jacobian matrix. So for the Jacobian matrix, we have already seen that it is the coordinate matrix multiplied by the derivatives of the shape function matrix, right. So if I know the expressions for ni hats, I can get their derivatives, okay. So this column suggests the derivatives of the ni's with respect to xi, this column denotes the derivatives of the shape function with respect to eta. So we have taken transpose of it because in the code I have shown that we are storing the shape functions in a given row, say n1, n2, n3, n4 in a given row, and their derivatives also we are storing in a given row. So that is why, since it is arranged in a column, so that is why we are representing it using a transpose, and this thing denotes that it is this matrix contains the derivatives of ni's with respect to xi or eta, alright. So at a given point in the master element, say xi I eta I can evaluate this matrix, alright. So that will give me the derivatives of the shape function in the master element at a given point. Now that if we insert it here, alright, because this is the same as that case. So if I insert it here, then we will get the Jacobian at that corresponding point. So this is the Jacobian matrix, okay. How we arrived at this Jacobian, that also has been discussed. We said that Jacobian in a given matrix looks like this. It is del x by del xi, del y by del xi, then del x by del eta and del y by del eta. So, that was the expression for Jacobian, and then we replaced x as xi ni and y as yi ni, alright, and we come up with this relation, alright. So, for the problem in hand, this coordinate matrix X appears to be this, okay. These are all x coordinates of the nodes 1, 2, 3, 4, these are the y coordinates of the node 1, 2, 3, 4. So, that is exactly this matrix, alright. So, now once we know the Jacobian at a given point, so this gives us the Jacobian at a given point in the master element xi I eta I, alright. So, once we calculate the Jacobian at a given point in the master element, next task is to calculate the determinant. So, this for the current problem, okay, once I replace the X matrix, the Jacobian takes this shape, alright, and particularly for this geometry the Jacobian depends on only on eta, alright. Now, once I know this, for this particular problem we calculated the determinant, and the determinant turns out to be a function of eta. So, all these terms we can evaluate at a particular point in the master element, alright. Now, let us calculate the B matrix. So, this strain displacement matrix contains the derivatives of the shape functions which are defined in the physical element with respect to x and y, alright. So, these are the derivatives of the shape functions in the physical element with respect to x and y. So, we have to calculate the value of B, okay, at a given point in the master element. So, how do we do that? So, that has been discussed earlier. We said that the derivative of ni with respect to x is equal to the derivative of ni hat with respect to xi into del xi del x plus the derivative of the corresponding shape function in the master element with respect to eta times del eta del x, alright. Similarly, the derivative of the shape function ni with respect to y can be attained from the product of these two vectors, alright. And what is this matrix? This we talked about earlier. So, this turns out to be the Jacobian inverse transpose, alright. So, the gradient of the shape function in the physical element, and this is the gradient of the corresponding shape function in the master element, because that is why the prime is here. So, these are the derivatives of ni hats with respect to xi and eta, and these are the derivatives of ni with respect to x and y. They are related by this matrix J inverse transpose, alright. So, here we will do it in one go. We will note down all the derivatives or all the gradients of the shape function in the master element, okay. We have arranged it column wise, then we have multiplied with J inverse transpose, then we got the corresponding gradients in the physical element. So, if I put a value of xi and eta, alright, because these derivatives in the shape function is a function of xi and eta. So, and this Jacobian inverse transpose is also a function of xi and eta, alright. So, these values of the shape functions, derivatives of the shape functions in the physical element will be obtained corresponding to a value in the master element, alright. So, once the derivatives are obtained, now we have to arrange it in this particular form of BE, alright, to get this matrix, alright. So, del n1 del x we have to arrange it here, then del n2 del x we have to arrange it in the first row, second column, and so on, alright. So, this is what we cannot use right now, okay. We have to reshape it, okay, in the form of B. So, this is the new step that we have to do for this problem. If you remember, in the steady state heat conduction problem we used this shape itself, okay. Now, once we have calculated the value of the B at a given point in the master element, now let us calculate the stiffness matrix. How we do that? I have written the expression for element stiffness matrix, that is B transpose dB. here the letters are bold just to denote that they are matrices. So, B is a function of xi eta that we have already calculated. This D is a constant, we have shown it for the plane stress case. Then BE, here we have determinant of the Jacobian that we have already calculated as a function of xi and eta. Now, how come this appear is because we have represented dA, which is in the physical element, we have related it to the corresponding element in the master element. So, this we have already derived in the steady state heat conduction problem, that dA is equal to determinant of Jacobian times dA hat. Alright. So, now this integration is over the master element. So, this is the integrand, okay, that we have to evaluate at a particular Gauss point xi I eta I, then we have to multiply with a weight Wi, which corresponds to the ith Gauss point, okay, and then sum the contribution over all the Gauss points. So, in this case if you look at BE, so BE is of size 3 by 8, so transpose is of size 8 by 3, D is of size 3 by 3 and B is again of size 3 by 8, and determinant this is of 1 is a scalar and this is also a scalar. So, here we have a matrix of size 8 by 8, so that has been evaluated at a particular Gauss point, and similarly if I use other Gauss points, so we have to evaluate the stiffness, we have to evaluate the B transpose dB at other points also, and we have sum eta, we have to sum them up. Alright. So, here I have demonstrated the process using a particular Gauss point. So, we have chosen 2 Gauss point in each direction. So, in xi direction we have taken 2 Gauss points, in eta direction we have taken 2 Gauss points. Alright. So, total we have 4 Gauss points P1, P2, P3, P4, and these are the values of the Gauss points, coordinates of the Gauss points P1, P2, P3 and P4. So, out of these 4 Gauss points, let us evaluate these matrices, okay, at P1, which is at minus 1 by root 3 minus 1 by root 3, which is here. Alright. So, our purpose is to evaluate this stiffness at a given point, or B transpose dV into J at a given point. So, first of all we will calculate the Jacobian at xi 1 eta 1, that we have already shown how to calculate for this particular problem. Let us go back. So, this is the expression for the Jacobian matrix where we have to insert the value of xi 1 eta 1. In fact, this is not a function of xi 1. So, then we will obtain the determinant following this expression. Alright. So, this is the determinant calculated at xi 1 eta 1. Then we will calculate the derivatives of the shape functions in the master element, okay, at xi 1 eta 1. So, these are the values. So, this is the derivative n1 hat comma xi. So, this is n1 hat comma eta at xi 1 eta 1 and so on. So, this we have calculated at xi 1 eta 1. Then we have pre-multiplied this n hat comma xi eta by J inverse transpose calculated at xi 1 eta 1, and we got the derivatives of the shape function in the physical element. So, this is the matrix that we have obtained once we pre-multiply this with J inverse transpose. Alright. So, these are all calculated at a particular Gauss point, and this has to be repeated at all these 4 Gauss points, and then we have to sum them up. So, once I get this n, then corresponding B, okay, of that form that we have to rewrite. Okay. So, these values we have to enter into this B, alright, corresponding to this xi 1 eta 1 term. Now, once I get BE at a given xi 1 eta 1, that I can repeat at all other Gauss points, okay, and then evaluate B transpose dB, okay, and then multiply with the Jacobian, determinant of the Jacobian at that point, and the corresponding weight. So, in this case the weights are basically 1. Alright. So, we get the stiffness matrix. So, we have shown here the numerical values here. So, you can check with your own problem, with your own solution. So, in this case I have used only one element. So, this stiffness matrix is full and is size of 8 by 8, alright. So, this has been calculated numerically using two Gauss points in each direction. The next task is to calculate the force vector. So, if I look at the force vector expression, I have n transpose B and n transpose T, alright. Now, this n transpose, this is a physical, in the physical domain the shape functions are same as the shape function in the master element, alright. They are 1 at one node and 0 at all other nodes. But so we can actually use the same shape functions the master in the master element that we can use here and carry out the integral. Now, in this particular problem only the edge BC is subjected to traction, alright. So, this integral over the Neumann boundary is to be calculated only over the edge BC, okay. All other edges we do not have to calculate. And moreover, since the body force is not specified, okay, so the second term, the first term will turn out to be 0. So, that we do not have to calculate. So, now let us see how we can calculate this contribution of the traction force, okay, acting along the edge BC on the domain in the global force vector. Now, if I look at the corresponding discretized domain along the edge BC, okay, which corresponds to the edge connecting node 2 and 3, and along that edge the shape function n1 and n4 is basically 0, because that is how we constructed n1 and n2, n1 and n4. So, n1 and n4 are basically 0 along the edge 2 3. So, it means that the n that we need to use in calculating this n transpose T, alright. So, along that edge BC this n1 and n4 they are not contributing because they are 0 along that edge. So, this becomes convenient for us. So, we have to only find out the contribution due to n2 and n3, alright. So, now let us look at this problem again, okay. So, n2, here I have written the n2 along BC. Now, you just note down the n2 in the physical element is same as the n2 hat in the master element, okay, and this BC basically represents the corresponding edge in the master element, alright. So, that is, so if I look at the shape function n2 in the physical element along the boundary, how n2 is varying, n2 is 1 at node 2 and is linearly going to 0 along the edge. So, this is the definition of n2, alright. Similarly, if I draw n3, so n3 is 1 in element in node 3 and is linearly varying to 0, okay, along the edge. So, this is n3, okay. So, this I have drawn only along the edge, okay, BC, okay. I have not shown it over the whole domain, okay. It is also linearly varying along x as well. So, along this edge, okay, this is how the n2 and n3 is varying. So, if I draw the corresponding master element, one dimensional case, okay, because we have to map this, okay, to the master element, okay, in order to calculate the value of this integral. So, since we have to move it anti-clockwise, so the node 2 will be mapped to node 1, okay, and node 3 here will be mapped to this node 2, alright. And here we will be using a different parameter xi bar, okay, because xi we have already used for the 2 dimensional element. So, how will we map? So, this edge BC, in order to map that, what we will use? We will use these shape functions defined in the master element corresponding to 1 dimensional case, and how it looks. So, this is 1 here and 0 here, and the other one is 0 in the first node and 1 in the second node. So this is, I will denote as n1 double hat, and this will denote as n2 double hat. Why? Because this is different from n1 hat. Alright. So just to distinguish it, we have used double hats. Alright. Now n1 double hat and n2 double hat, we know the expressions. Okay. This is 1 minus xi bar by 2 and 1 plus xi bar by 2. This we have done many times in one dimensional case. So this n2 in the physical element is same as n1 double hat, and this n3 in the physical element is same as n2 double hat. So that is why in the shape function matrix we are replacing n2 with n1 double hat and replacing n3 with n2 double hat. Alright, fine. And t vector will be specified, so it has two components, tx and ty. So we have to now multiply n transpose t. Alright. So now as you see, if I multiply, the first row times this column will become 0, the second row times this column becomes 0, the first two entries will become 0, the third entry will be n1 double hat into tx, the fourth entry will be n1 double hat into ty, fifth entry will be n2 double hat into tx, and sixth entry will be n2 double hat into ty, and the other two entries will again be 0. So only we have to integrate either n1 double hat into tx, okay, or n1 double hat into ty, or n2 double hat into tx and n2 double hat into ty. So these are the things that we need to integrate. Now if t is a function of xy, then what we have to do? So what is the process for numerical integration? We have to evaluate the integrand at certain points, okay, of the domain. As we have seen, so if I choose two Gauss points, okay, in this master element, so in that case it becomes the xi bar corresponding to these points are plus minus 1 by root 3. Alright. So we at these 2 points we have to evaluate t, and we have to evaluate this matrix also. So this matrix has already been written in n1 double hat and n2 double hat, which are already a function of xi bar. So this we can easily calculate by just putting the value of xi bar. But if the t is defined in the domain as a function of xy, so what we have to do? First we have to find out the corresponding physical point on the edge. Okay, if this is the first Gauss point, we have to find out the physical corresponding physical point on the edge, and similarly for this we have to find out the corresponding physical corresponding coordinate in the physical element. How will you do that? We will use these relations. Okay, so this I have already discussed. So these two equation we can use and find out the corresponding point on that edge. So we can evaluate this t at those Gauss points. Alright. So now how to calculate f? So here this is on the physical domain, okay, along the edge 2 3. So that we are writing as the n, so that is this matrix that has been calculated at xi I, okay, transpose t, that has also been calculated at xi I, okay, that I just told how to calculate t at a given Gauss point, okay, times the Jacobian. So in the one dimensional case, the Jacobian is the length of the physical element. So the length of the physical element in this case is the length of BC. So that is HBC divided by 2. Alright. Now this is the integrand, and then we have to multiply with the corresponding weight. Now this weight is basically the weight corresponding to the one dimensional integration scheme. Alright. So this has been evaluated at a particular Gauss point, so we have to repeat it for every Gauss point. So in this case we have taken 2 Gauss points, so that is why the summation is over 1 to 2. So this is how we can calculate the force vector. Now since we are using one element, okay, so our element force vector will be of size 8 by 1, okay, for t equal to 100 Newton, as we have shown in the problem definition, t is acting normal to the edge, okay. So we can actually find out the component along n x and y, okay, because all the dimensions are provided. So we can calculate the corresponding component Tx and Ty, and in this case we have assumed it to be uniform. So, it is not depending on x and y. So, if we assume all this, so if we use the value of T as 100 Newton per meter, the force vector you can calculate as this. As you can see, the first two entries and the last two entries are 0, alright. And since these Tx and Ty are acting in the opposite to x and y, so that is why these non-zero entries are turning out to be negative.